Hey, time for part two, chapter 10, section 2. And this should not take up the whole 15 minutes, I hope. You remember we left off talking about congressional elections and talking about districts, how each member of the House is chosen from a district in their state. A curious phenomenon, that's putting it kindly, happens called gerrymandering. One of the greatest terms in all of government, gerrymandering. And what gerrymandering is when congressional districts are drawn, remember, they're drawn by the state legislatures. So, or the state legislatures are responsible for drawing the boundaries of those districts. It's when congressional districts with unusual shapes are drawn that way in order to give an advantage to the party that controls the state legislature. So the best way to show this is to actually show you examples of that. Okay, so here's the district map of California. This is actually, it's been redone. It's still 53 districts. There wasn't a change, but this was the one that was in effect from 2003 to 2012. And you notice there's some very weird shapes. They're not natural. They don't follow a river or a mountain range or any natural boundaries or anything, especially if you look up in Northern California, like at District 1, 2, 4, 3, those are not regular shapes. You take a look at some of the other shapes, like look at number 20. That's not a normal shape that you would think to draw. If I told you to divide California into 53 pieces, some of you are very artistic and would probably draw it like that, but most of you wouldn't. You'd have regular shapes, squares, rectangles, maybe some triangles, but nothing like that. That's because a lot of these districts are gerrymandered. They've been drawn that way in order to give one party or the other an advantage. And what the state legislature does when they're responsible for drawing these boundaries is the party in the majority has control of that process. So they're going to draw as many districts as they possibly can that will be sure to elect a member of their party to the House of Representatives. And it's huge when it comes, like look at the voting that's taking place now in the debate in Congress over health care and tax cuts and basically the Trump agenda and the Republican agenda. Well, you got to have a majority, and you don't want to lose your majority. So that's called gerrymandering. And the best way to understand it is to see it. Those districts are many of those districts you see there are gerrymandered. They've been drawn in such a way as to give their party. Now, in the case of California, the Democrats control the state legislature. Those lines have been drawn to give as many districts as possible a guarantee to vote Democrat. There's two ways you do that. You either create a district that's a majority of Democrats, a strong majority of Democrats. It's impossible to create 53 Democratic districts. It's just impossible demographically, and there are some Republicans in California. So the other way you approach it, if you're a state legislator, say in this case a Democratic state legislator, is you might, if there's Republicans in an area, what you might do is you might also gerrymander a district that they will win, but in doing so you guarantee that they're not going to affect the election maybe in 4 or 5 surrounding districts. So yes, you give them you put them in the majority in a district, a majority of Republican voters in a district, and they're going to win. They're going to send a Republican from that seat. However, what you've done is made sure they're not in these other Democratic districts and could be help a Republican candidate contest a Democrat there. So here's an example of a gerrymandered district. This is actually the 46th district, congressional district here in California. It's no longer. This was from 2002 to 2013. But this is a gerrymandered district. I don't know if you recognize it, but you have Long Beach there in the center. To the left there, you have Palos Verdes. You go down and towards the right, and you have Huntington Beach, a little bit of Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. There's Seal Beach, Los Alamitos. Anybody from Los Alamitos? Have I offended anybody from Los Alamitos? This is gerrymandering. If you know this area, there's no reason to draw the lines like that. There's no mountain range there. There's no river. That's not like city boundaries or anything like that. What that is a Republican district. That was gerrymandered in order to guarantee a Republican victory there. Actually, it was created to keep those Republican voters out of all the surrounding Democratic districts, so they couldn't contest there. You have primarily a strong majority of Republican voters there in Palos Verdes, down into Huntington Beach, Orange County, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, Seal Beach, Los Alamitos. A strong majority of Republican voters. This district, as it's constituted, would always vote Republican. It's guaranteed. Okay? Here's another example. See if I can get to it. There's another example. This is the old 39th California Congressional District that actually Mayfair was in. And this is gerrymandered. There's no rivers or mountains or natural boundaries of any kind. There's not city boundaries. This is gerrymandered. This district was created to secure a seat for a Democrat in Congress, to guarantee that would be a strong Democratic district. Now, it's not hard to do in this part of LA County because it's a strong Republican contingent, Democrat contingent or voters here in this part of LA County. That's a gerrymandered district. You can tell it's just not a natural shape that you would think to draw. But with that said, what's happened is in California, we no longer have the state legislature determine the boundaries for the 53 districts. We now have the voters, we voted directly, I'm going to say in 2012, before 2010, somewhere around there, we voted here in California in a proposition to take the redistricting job away from the state legislature and have a nonpartisan commission, meaning the people on that commission who would draw the boundaries do not belong to one party or another. They don't have any political party affiliation. They haven't run for office, anything like that. Merely trying to make as 53 equal districts as possible. So the result of that here in California is we don't have a whole lot of gerrymandering anymore. Let me show you an example. This is what used to comprise part of the 46th district, remember, that had that Republican district that had Palos Verdes and the wealthy part of Long Beach and Los Alamitos and Seal Beach and Huntington Beach, and this is now that district, part of that district. It was split up into the 48th district. It's still a strong Republican district, but not as strong as it was before. You can only do so much, or still you're going to have pockets of Republican and Republican voters and Democratic voters. So, and then here's the old, what used to be the 39th district. Now, bear with me. I'll get there. There it is. That's the 38th district now. And this is Mayfair. If you look closely, Mayfair is in this district, the 38th district. Linda Sanchez has been our representative, I think, since, I'm going to say 2002 or so. Again, it's going to be, you can't make a Republican district in this area There's not enough Republican voters, but it's a little more even than it was before. It used to be like 75-25. So, so with that said about gerrymandering, the reality is we don't have a whole lot of gerrymandering here in California anymore. We took it out of the hands of the state legislature. There are still some states that have gerrymandering. There's an important case coming up before the Supreme Court on gerrymandering, and the result may very well be that gerrymandering becomes illegal, unconstitutional.
So sweet, so beautiful, and every day like a queen on her throne. Though nobody knows how she feels, Aisha lady, one day it'll be real. She moves like a breeze. I swear I can get her out of my dreams. To have her shining right here by my side, I'd sacrifice all the tears in my eyes. Ooh, 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 Aisha, Aisha, passing me by. There she go again. Aisha, Aisha, my, my, my. Ooh, Aisha, Aisha, smile for me now.
I don't know.
Aisha in my life.
Now, when it comes to districting, many issues arise, and there was an important Supreme Court case in 1964, Westbury versus Sanders, and the result of the question was, the issue was that the congressional districts were not even. Some were drawn with more people or less people. And so what ended up happening is that people in rural districts, well outside of the city, were overrepresented. There were fewer members in a district, yet they still got one representative. And that came at the expense of people living in urban and suburban districts. So there was a case that went to the Supreme Court. And what the Supreme Court ruled was that in the Westbury versus Sanders case was that you can't be over or underrepresented in Congress. There's a democratic principle of one person, one vote, and the way we were districting or drawing the district lines was violating that one person, one vote. So as a result of Westbury versus Sanders, since then, districts, when they are drawn in a state, have to be of approximate equal number of people. It's hard to get exact because people come in and out, and it just, because of the logistics, it may not be able to, you can't get exactly even in every district, but for most districts you can. Okay, and that was the result of Westbury versus Sanders. So what are the constitutional qualifications for being House members? You know these already. You must be 25 years of age. You must be a citizen for at least 7 years. And you've got to be an inhabitant of the state in which you are going to represent. Now, when it comes to the qualifications for House members, it is the House that gets to judge the acceptability of individual members, and they can vote to censure or actually remove members if there are some issues. Some resign before that happens, and these are 3 pictures of losers that were not acceptable. They took bribes, they committed crimes. However, in the Supreme Court case Powell versus McCormick in 1969, the Supreme Court ruled that the House may not exclude any members elect who meet the Constitution's requirements. And I'll have to explain what that means in class because I'm out of time.